I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate those that spoke in support, because it's not easy when opposition uses what is oftentimes used with these types of bills, which is fear. And I get that, because using fear makes it a lot more difficult for us to actually do the work that's necessary to create a justice system that does work for everyone and that's fair. I'm asking all of you colleagues to actually look at what this bill actually does, not the anecdotal comments from those in opposition that suggest somehow that people are going to get away with things that they are found guilty of, which is simply not true. We know, for example, that a couple of the examples raised specific to domestic violence and to child abuse, well, there's already mechanisms. There's alternative sentencing, for example, on those that are repeat felony domestic violence perpetrators of 3 years longer than a first-time offender, not to mention that if there's great bodily injury, that's an additional 5 years on top of the underlying sentence. Similar enhancements, both sentencing, the underlying sentence itself, as well as enhancements on top, apply to child abuse as well. It's easy to say, oh, we're getting rid of this for those that perpetrate child abuse or domestic violence, because that naturally pulls at all of our heartstrings. We want to protect our children. We want to protect those that are victims of domestic violence. And removing SB 136 does not prevent us from doing that. In fact, the exact same mechanisms that are specific to repeat offenders in domestic violence, but child abuse, and numerous other kinds of conduct will continue to be on the books and continue to be used to hold people accountable and make sure that no one gets a pass. And we do know that people, as mentioned by one of our colleagues, do horrible things. And we're going to continue to be able to prosecute and sentence them for horrible things they do. Now, what this comes down to, quite simply, and I appreciate my colleague from Oakland for speaking to some of the existing enhancements that aren't going anywhere. There's over 150 of them. And I know that at times there are folks that say, well, aren't we doing a lot on criminal justice reform? Our colleague from Torrance indicates that he understands our efforts in criminal justice reform. However, ignores the fact that we have enhancements that will continue to punish those that perpetrate heinous crimes and violent crimes. Over decades, California became the incarceration capital of the world. That didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen because all of a sudden people were suddenly committing more crimes. It happened because of decisions in this body. It was decisions in this body that created the incarceration capital of the world. Now, brick by brick, we're trying to remove the foundations of mass incarceration while maintaining the foundation of an equitable criminal justice system. You can do both. We've been making our best efforts to do both, and we know that many of the enhancements that we've been focusing on, again, of the 150 plus, we're not going after 150 enhancements. We're going after targeted enhancements such as the 1-year prison prior enhancement, because it's such a broadly applicable enhancement. Let's keep all the specific enhancements that deal with specific conduct, specific repeated conduct. The problem with having a broad enhancement like this 1-year enhancement is that it gets broadly used. And not just against those that do horrible things, whatever that means in terms of the penal code. It gets used across the board against everyone, and it's mostly poor people and people of color. We know that you're far more likely to serve jail time or prison time if you're a person of color and if you're poor. What we're saying is, judges, you have all the discretion. We've given you 150 enhancements. Not only that, you can use the higher term on your sentence, on your sentencing guidelines. You don't have to use the low and add a 1-year enhancement. Use the midterm. Use the higher term. That's what probation reports do. They talk about your criminal history. That's what DAs push for. We know this, and I know this because I've seen it in practice.
Please wrap it up, Mr. Kalra.
I've seen it in practice. And I know that by removing this enhancement, we are in no way making our communities any less safe. And we're in no way taking away the tools necessary for a judge to adequately make sure that a punishment fits the crime as she or he sees it.
Mr. Kalra, your time is up, please.
I implore you to support this enhancement, as was indicated by our colleague from San Diego. Other enhancements are far more complex and complicated. This is quite a simple one that still allows us to make sure that we have a justice system that works for everyone. Thank you.